It was this incredible icon of the future, a real-life time machine that was supposed to bring the entire world closer. For 27 amazing years, it was truly the peak of air travel. And now? Now it's a museum piece, a beautiful relic. This is the story of Concorde, the supersonic dream that flew so incredibly high and so fast before tragically falling from the sky.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. We once had the ability to cross the Atlantic Ocean in 3 hours, and now we don't. The day Concorde was retired in 2003, it really felt like a retreat, right? It was this moment where our ambition got ahead of what was practical, and the sky itself just felt a little bit smaller. To understand why it disappeared, we first have to appreciate just what an absolute marvel this machine was. To really get what we lost, you have to wrap your head around the sheer power we used to have at our fingertips. Concorde's cruising speed was Mach 2.02. Okay, so what does that even mean? It's over 1,300 miles per hour, more than twice the speed of sound. And get this, that's literally faster than a speeding bullet fired from a handgun. And it didn't just fly fast, it flew high. We're talking 60,000 feet. That's almost double the altitude of a regular airliner. Up there, you're on the very edge of space. Passengers weren't just flying, they were seeing something incredible. They could actually see the gentle curve of the Earth set against this deep, dark violet color of the stratosphere. Just imagine that view.
And this is the number that changed everything. 3 hours. That's all it took to get from New York to London. The plane was actually moving faster than the Earth was rotating. Think about it. You could take off from London after breakfast and land in New York before breakfast on the same day. It didn't just make the world feel smaller, it literally bent time.
So yeah, this was way more than just an airplane. For almost 3 decades, it was like a god in the sky. Let's dig into the legend. Concorde was pure, unfiltered optimism turned into a real flying machine. It stood for speed, for luxury, and for this belief in a future that had no limits. For the people down on the ground, that signature double sonic boom wasn't noise. It was the sound of progress tearing a hole in the sky. And for the people lucky enough to be on board, it was the most exclusive club on Earth, right at the edge of space.
And this really shows you what it was all about. It was born from this huge Anglo-French partnership, and it finally started flying commercially in 1976. Inside, it was like nothing else, an all-first-class cabin with just 100 passengers. Everyone was treated like royalty, because when you're flying in a time machine, well, you kinda are.
But the real magic wasn't just the champagne service, you know? It was the absolutely mind-blowing engineering that seemed to defy the laws of physics. So, let's take a look at the anatomy of this speeding bullet. Okay, so when you're flying at Mach 2, the friction with the air heats the plane's skin to over 120 degrees Celsius. This intense heat created a wild engineering problem. The entire aluminum body of the plane would physically stretch and expand in flight by up to 300 millimeters. That's almost a whole foot. There's a famous story about a flight engineer who'd put his cap in a little gap that appeared on the flight deck mid-flight, only to find it was completely stuck once the plane landed, cooled down, and shrank back to its normal size. Incredible.
And then you have that iconic look, the droop snoot. Here was the problem. To get enough lift at slow speeds, Concorde had to land with its nose pointing way up. But that super long, sharp nose would completely block the pilot's view of the runway. So what was the brilliant solution? A hinged nose that could actually lower, or droop, down a full 12.5 degrees for landing. It gave the pilots a perfect view, and then it would smoothly retract back up for supersonic flight.
And the heart of this beast? 4 massive, military-grade engines with afterburners. Now, to break the sound barrier, these things would inject raw fuel right into the jet exhaust. The sound? It wasn't just a roar, it was this deep, chest-thumping explosion, a controlled detonation that literally announced that the future had arrived and was rocketing into the heaven.
It was an absolute marvel of engineering, a true titan of the skies. But on July 25, 2000, this 186-ton giant was brought down by something impossibly small. This is the story of the fatal inch.
The whole sequence of events was just terrifyingly fast. As Air France 4590 sped down the runway, its tire hit a piece of metal. 1 second later, the tire blows. A huge piece of rubber gets thrown upwards into the wing. Only 2 seconds into the whole thing, that impact ruptures a fuel tank, and a massive fire erupts. The crew fought like hell for control, but the engines were failing, the landing gear wouldn't retract, and in just 90 seconds, it was all over.
So here's the crucial point. The whole investigation traced this unbelievable disaster back to this one single piece of metal, a 435mm strip of titanium. And the craziest part, it wasn't even a Concorde part. It had fallen off a Continental DC-10 that took off just 5 minutes earlier. Just a tiny foreign object, a sliver of terrible luck, just lying there on the runway.
Now that titanium strip didn't actually pierce the wing itself. It acted like a knife, shredding the tire. This chunk of rubber, weighing about 10 pounds, was shot upwards with an incredible amount of kinetic energy. It basically became a projectile launched like a cannonball straight at the wing's most vulnerable spot.
Now this is where the physics of it all gets really wild. The rubber didn't just punch a hole. The force of its impact sent a massive shockwave, what they call a hydrodynamic pressure surge, rippling through the full fuel tank. This internal wave was so powerful, it literally blew a huge piece of the tank's skin outwards, ripping it open from the inside. And this just perfectly captures the tragic irony of it all. You have this nearly 200-ton marvel of engineering, a machine that could fly faster than sound at the edge of space, and it was brought down by a piece of metal the length of your forearm and a 10-pound chunk of rubber. It's just unbelievable.
This photo from the accident report is just haunting. It shows the scars left on the runway, a dark trail of soot and unburnt fuel marking the plane's final, fiery path. It's just a stark, visual record of a beautiful dream turning into an absolute nightmare in a matter of seconds.
The crash in Paris was the beginning of the end. But honestly, it wasn't the only reason Concorde is gone. A perfect storm of factors was brewing that would ultimately leave us with an empty sky. It really was a cascade of failures. First, the 2000 crash completely shattered public confidence and its perfect safety record. Then, just as it was about to come back, the September 11th attacks happened, and they just devastated the airline industry. That high-end business travel Concorde relied on, it vanished basically overnight. And all this time, the aging fleet was just getting more and more expensive to maintain. The economic reality was simply impossible to ignore. And so, on October 24th, 2003, the last commercial Concorde flight touched down for the final time. After 27 years of supersonic service, the dream was officially over. A void was left in the sky, this high watermark of speed and human ambition that, we just haven't reached since.
Which leaves us all with one final question to think about. Was Concorde a brilliant failure? On one hand, it was an engineering triumph that bent the laws of physics. On the other, it was an economic disaster that just couldn't survive in the real world. A beautiful, ambitious machine that was born in a different time. It was a glimpse of a future we once had and then somehow lost.